Good afternoon, everyone. Today's encounter is going to be conducted by Maithily Bhupatkar. She is a Mumbai-based independent movement practitioner. She has a master's in industrial psychology with an initial training in Bharatanatyam. Although now she is keen to explore a contemporary movement vocabulary. She is currently part of two active theatre productions. One is Moonfool, directed by Sujay Saple. The other, Blank Page, by Sunil Shanbag. She is also the program manager for a movement class called the Dance for Parkinson's Disease, which is conducted in association with the Mark Morris Dance Group from New York. Maithily was also a part of the Monsoon Workshops 2016, and we'd like to extend a very warm welcome to her today.
Hi, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't need to use the mic. The afternoon slot is a very challenging one for a speaker. Because everyone has just come out of lunch or a nice meal. But thank you so much for having me. I primarily am doing this interaction of sharing my work maybe for the first time. Speaking a little bit about my journey as a dancer, and now, like I like to call myself a movement practitioner and not a dancer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly speak about my journey from a corporate job to a movement practitioner, and then share glimpses of my work through this journey, and also then tell you what space I am currently in, and then I will open it out to any questions that you may have. Yeah, is that okay?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So like in my introduction, it was mentioned that I am an industrial psychologist. I am primarily from Pune. I studied in Bombay, did a master's here. At that time, I was very interested in social sciences as well as literature, so I took up psychology and then went back to Pune to work into corporate organizations. One was Thermax and one was Tech Mahindra. So I spent a large part of my career in IT, completely burnt myself out to work for 12 hours a day. I was also pursuing dance at the same time. I've always been a Bharatanatyam dancer since childhood. My Arangetram. Does anyone know what Arangetram is?
Yeah.
What is it? Sorry? Yeah, it's the first step into the outside world. So when the guru feels you are ready to perform and showcase your talent, you can go up on stage. So I did my Arangetram when I was in 10th standard, and after which my practice fizzled out, which happens with a lot of us when you have your 10th and 12th standard exams coming up. I still kept in touch with dancing. I did some western, some jazz, some salsa on the side. So I was constantly doing that as I was working. But it's only in around 2010 that something pulled me towards movement much more. I saw a festival in Pune called the Prayatna Film and Dance Festival. It's a festival where dance films, dance performances are curated for a progressive urban audience. So newer practices in dance and movement is something that is showcased. So that's something that I saw, and I was very intrigued to follow this path of contemporary movement. Now, can any one of y'all share what your understanding of contemporary movement is? Whatever, take a guess. No marks here. Of contemporary movement. Any guesses? Any things that come to your mind? I can give it a shot.
A new way of expressing the present.
Okay, yeah, it's a new way, it's a unique way of expressing something, yes. Anything else? Some of you all did some work in contemporary movement with me. Anything that you all recall? So the contemporary space has some characteristics, and that is something that I'm still discovering. For me, the first characteristic is to have a very individual expression of an idea. A lot of dances may propagate looking like each other, a very specific style that then you keep milking and churning. But a contemporary movement could be extremely individual and may not have any familiarity. For example, if I do this gesture, this gesture, this gesture, this gesture, there's already some familiarity you have with it. This gesture, right? It's a familiar movement. It's a symbol of something that you have experienced. Now, contemporary wants to break that familiarity, okay, and do a unique gesture. It could be this. It could mean different things for different people because there's no familiarity already established with this gesture. It could be me holding my head, it could be me hurt, it could be whatever perceptions you all have of that movement. So that is one characteristic, that it's an individual expression. The other characteristic for me, and I'm still discovering that, is that it's a very critical space. I do not know what to expect when I'm going for a contemporary performance. It could be contemporary theatre, contemporary music, or contemporary dance. For example, if I'm going to listen to a thumri or a raga, I exactly know what I have to expect. But when I'm going into a into a contemporary space, I already have a wager with me that says, I don't know what is going to come. So I may like it or I may not like it. So that's also one characteristic, was experimental in nature. So these were two things that really pulled me towards the contemporary form. The other thing that personally pulled me was Bharatanatyam. I come from a Bharatanatyam practice. There's a lot of symmetry in Bharatanatyam, right? It's very symmetrical. There's an axis, horizontal and vertical, and you're always moving according to this axis. So contemporary movement offered me an opportunity to move away from this axis and find different parameters for movement, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Also in Bharatanatyam, because I was petite, I was stuck with playing Sita and always crying and being in these mythological setups, which at some point was really exhausting for me. Beyond that, I wasn't able to find a contemporary vocabulary. There are a lot of classical dancers who are finding contemporary vocabulary even within the classical dance, but I didn't have the capability then to explore that. So I latched on to a contemporary movement class in Pune. It goes by the name of Center of Contemporary Dance. It's run by a director called Rishikesh Pawar. Now he studied movement from Germany in the school called the Great Palooka School from Dresden, which basically specializes in expressionist dance. So one of the pioneers, and some of you all may know of expressionist dance, is Pina Bausch. That's the most familiar name that you may have heard or read. But even before that, there have been many dancers who have explored that form. It was again a rebel movement against ballet, because ballet also has a certain structure, symmetry and form to it. And these dancers wanted to explore the expression beyond that form. So that was expressionist dance. So I studied with him for almost 4 years, on and off with my corporate job, and worked with some of his productions. For Pune, it was a very interesting space to have this dance school, and we did a lot of work together with reference to site-specific choreographies. So choreography that is designed for a particular space. It was one of our flagship choreographies. It was called Third Space. So we performed it once at British Council, which had 3 levels, and it was a moving performance. So we started from the ground floor and went up to different floors, and the audience moved with us. The second time we did this was at Max Muller in Pune, the Gotha Institute, which had an interesting architecture because it had a lawn and it had this building and a stage as well. So we moved from a narrow space into an open space of performance. The third time this was performed, again a site specific, was at Kala Ghoda Festival, where it was performed on a street. There was stage, but we moved through the audience, and the audience also then had to interact with the performance. So I'm going to show you a glimpse of Third Space, which was performed at the British Council. It was the first performance there. Yeah. Are you all with me?
Yes.
For me, it was very interesting to work with different spaces rather than just have a proscenium space, which is binary. So the audience is here and the performer is always here, to break that binary space as well. So that was interesting for me as a mover. So I worked with Rishikesh, and then he was looking for somebody to run his community project, which is called Dance for Parkinson's Disease. So Parkinson's disease is a neurological disorder, and some of the symptoms, if you know of Parkinson's, are tremors. Yeah, it is freezing, so a person can't move. There's very rigidity, so they will walk like that because there's a problem with balance. And their brain does not give a signal to their extremities to do something. So if I have to go and pick up that book, I know I have to pick up that book, but my hand is not supporting me because there's a lack of a chemical called dopamine in the brain, which is not produced. And dopamine is like oiling for the body. It transmits this information to my limb saying, okay, now I have to pick up the book. So that is absent. So there is a group in New York called the Mark Morris Dance Group. It's a very famous very renowned dance company that tied up with a Parkinson's group called Brooklyn Parkinson Group. And they realized that movement, like the way I teach somebody dance and the way I instruct somebody with Parkinson's is very similar. So for dancers, I will break down the movement, no? Put your right foot forward, turn right, raise your left hand. That's exactly how I need to break down my movement for Parkinson patients. So because of this correlation, they started a movement class around 12 years back called Dance for PD. It's a program that has received a lot of recognition around the world. So they basically run a class for people who are suffering from Parkinson's. It's a regular movement class. People come in, they move, do a small warm-up, a choreography, cool down and leave. Now some of the benefits of this class that were empirically observed were controlling the symptoms of Parkinson's. Because Parkinson's is a progressive disorder. Yeah, it increases, the intensity increases. So this is something that they realized through this Parkinson's class. And Rishikesh was looking to get this program in India. So he was looking for somebody who could be interested in running this program, and he wanted somebody with a psychology background to do it. So he asked me if I was interested, and I jumped at the offer. So I went to New York to Mark Morris Dance Group. I got trained there, I interned with them, and we got the program to India, partnered with a hospital in Pune, and started it off. So 2010 is when we started this program. It's a very dear program to me because I've seen patients progressively improve through this program. It also becomes a self-help mechanism for them, where they also enjoy the presence of so many other group members. It's also quick success for them to think that, okay, at 45 I can move. So that also becomes very interesting for them. So then I shifted to Bombay actually to bring the program to Bombay, and in Bombay I do house visits. In Pune we have a full class that runs thrice a week. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you a glimpse of the documentary called Dance for Parkinson's. It's actually a half-an-hour documentary, but I'm going to show you 10 minutes of it to give you an understanding of what work I am doing with Parkinson patients. Yeah, it's a slightly old documentary. There's much more that has happened after, but I can address that during questions.
या क्लासमुळे मला कॉन्फिडन्स आला एकदम उत्तम
It's very inspiring to me. Dedication of the teachers is giving a new lease of life to all the patients. आनंदी आणि उत्साही वाटतंय. त्या बाहेर पडायला मी घाबरत असे, आता घाबरत नाही.
आपला जॉईन केल्यापासून मला पार्किन्सन झालाय हेच विसरून गेले.
2007 when I got back to India, there were a lot of challenges for me as a performer of contemporary. Vis-a-vis, there were no contemporary performances. Doing work that was given to me, and most of it came from mediums of disabled students, students who couldn't speak, students who came with movement disorders and so on and so forth. And I sort of liked the whole medium because it challenged my academic understanding as a performer and as a teacher to really go back to basics and really see how it's going to benefit them. And 2008 is when we initiated the Parkinson project in India.
Parkinson's disease is caused by degeneration of a particular group of neurons or brain cells which produce a chemical called dopamine. So in absence of that, the movement gets stuck. Because of this, the patient feels rigid or stiff, movements become difficult, and the routine arrangements to the muscles are not made, resulting in stiffness, imbalance, tremors, which is shaking of hands, and most of all, slowness. Like it's like there is no energy, the person cannot move. In Parkinson's patients, it's a dual problem that one, their muscles of speech are not as effective, so the voice is low. The coordination of those muscles is not very good, and at the same time, they are also very depressed, and all this affects their speech. Now, if we change the form of speech, if we give them an option of singing instead of speaking, the way they can talk also improves. And once they realize that they can sing well, then their confidence to talk also improves. Alternative movement therapy for Parkinson's has been described more than 100 years ago. Patients should not be afraid about having to dance in front of people. They should be learning or looking at this as an alternative form of movement to a rhythm.
We sat down and jotted down what all we required for the class, and I think the most important thing on priority was having training and trained facilitators for the program. To run it, not only conducting the class but also driving the class and the entire project. So it was my visit to New York that actually gave us some insight into how is the model being developed and followed by Markman's dance group with the Brooklyn Parkinson group in New York, and how we should adapt it and bring it to India. We are also currently in touch with Markman's dance group, and we have regular conversations with them about the progress of the project and what more we can do in India and how to drive it ahead.
The idea was also to module the dance class, which was more sensitive towards the patients and the society, also keeping in mind that dance is not a part of the given society that we live in India.
And also one of the important takeaways was not to medicalize the program too much. It's a regular movement class. It's a class where you would conduct a session like you would in any other dance classes that we currently have, starting from a warm-up to a choreographic sequence to some form of relaxations towards the end of the class.
ऋषिकेश पवार आणखी मैथिली यांनी त्या दोघांनी एक कार्यक्रम
So I'm going to stop here because it gives you a glimpse of what the program is about. The rest of it is experiences of the patients and what they have gone through. You can catch a lot of this on YouTube. There's a lot of information if you're interested in this part of movement for the community. So I'm going to take some questions here because this ends one section of my journey. This is what I was doing in Pune before I moved to Mumbai. And then next I will speak a little about my current work here in Mumbai in theatre and in movement. Do you all have any questions about whatever you have seen or heard?
How do you see the improvements in the patients already with tremors and Parkinson's in that kind of a state?
Sure. So one evidence that we have got is that even when their medicines have been reduced, they're still able to move as effectively as they were with that dosage. So 25% of medicine reduction has happened in patients because with Parkinson's, if you're taking 2 pills, then your body develops a tolerance for 2 pills, and after 2 years, it will take 4 pills. But with some patients, that has been controlled, the inclusion of more pills. So that is a tangible evidence we have. The intangible is patients sharing the quality of life that has improved for them. Somebody was able to actually start making chapatis because otherwise she couldn't make them before, or rolling laddus, or buying a car, being able to steer a car. So these are improvements that we have seen in the patients. Any other questions?
The movements that you teach are from daily movements, or are they very different from what we...
That's actually a very good question. So Mark Morris has a repertory of movements which they usually work with, and that's been researched on what movements will help them. What we did in India was choose movements that are culturally more familiar to them. So we do a lot of mudra work. we do movements from regular life, like maybe cutting of a grass or steering or ringing a bell.
And they know the associations with those movements, or?
Usually this familiar movement, we use imagination exercises, like imagine you're holding grass and you have a cutter in your right hand. So imagination really works well with Parkinson patients. You can see it from your mind's eye. It works for any choreography also when you're giving exercises. So they know that, but they can also have unfamiliar territory. So for example, extend your hands like you are on a ship or on a beach. So that kind of visual imagery also works for them. But for us, the movements are from our culture. Because one barrier was also getting 45-year-olds and 50-year-olds to come to a class, which is a dance class. Because social dancing is not a culture in the East. It's much more of a culture in the West. So that to break that also, we had to start off with more familiar movements and then move to slightly abstracted repertoire. Any other questions? Okay, great. So this is my work that I've been continuing also in Bombay, although Bombay space is an issue. So I do house visits. The philosophy of this program all over the world is that it's a free program. We don't charge the patients or the caretakers anything. It's whatever donations they would want to give or feel like giving. Primarily on a very economic model, it works as a supplement to something that you're already doing. And we are also encouraging people who are more interested in this field to come and work with us. It's not, you don't need to be a dancer for it. You just need an understanding of the anatomy and movement, that's all. So that's part of Parkinson's. Now coming to what I'm currently doing in Mumbai is I'm exploring movement in theatre. I do one production called Moonfool, directed by Sujay. Now this production has been active since 2 years. We devised it for almost 7 months, and incidentally we started in this room. We started our entire work in this room. It was a very stressful and strenuous process because we were generating material on our own. So the concept of Moonfool is that it's based on the idea of the moon and the impossibility of a relationship, because you can see the moon but you can never get it, you can never own it. So this entire essence of loss, longing, wanting something but not being able to have it, but still enjoying that longing, that was the whole essence of Moonfool. And we researched a lot of things related to the moon, right from folk tales, stories, poems, movies, and we narrowed down on certain concepts, and then we started devising work around that. Any understanding of devised work that you may have? What do you think is a devised work? What is the primary definitive characteristic of a devised work? Say for example, I'm doing a theatre production and I'm going to devise it. So what does that mean?
Come up with the whole idea from
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an idea at a very heady level, but on the floor, no one's going to teach me a choreography. So somebody's going to tell me, this is a poem, you have to improvise based on this poem, and that is how you devise material. Then the director will say, okay, this is what material you have, I want you to remove this, I want you to keep this. And whatever is kept is then built into the final choreography. Therefore, it is your craft as well to be able to generate material in relation to that context. So Moonfool is an entirely devised piece. We are 4 performers, 2 actors, 2 dancers. The dancers also act and the actors also dance. So that is also something that people are exploring now. is how to integrate different disciplines, because actors also need movement and movers also need theatre, because we sometimes also work with voice and text. So merging these disciplines is something directors are exploring now, much more than they probably used to before. So that is about Moonfool. I don't have a video of Moonfool. Probably have to complain to Sujay about that. But whenever it runs, I'm sure you will be able to see something of it. The other work that I'm doing is called Blank Page. It's directed by Sunil Shanbag. I'm going to show you a glimpse of it and then talk about it. It's a choreography that I have devised for the piece and for the actors as well. Yeah?
Poetry festival, poems danced all over the house. When I was groping for a new poem for the poetry festival, poems danced all over the house. In nooks and corners, in the bed, in boxes, in walls and curtains, in doors and windows, poems beckoned with their hands.
The slow movement seems somehow to say much more. To watch the rarer birds, you have to go along deserted lanes, and where rivers flow in silence near the source, or by the shore, remote and thorny, like the heart's dark floor.
जिनका कोई घर नहीं होता, उनकी होती है भला कौन सी जगह? कौन सी जगह होती है ऐसी जो छूट जाने पर औरत हो जाती है कटे हुए नाखून, कंघी में फंसकर बाहर आए केशों से, एकदम बुहार भी जाने वाली.
Let me show you, friends, a man in jail. They offered him bail, but he didn't have the money, so he lives in jail. He did something wrong. He doesn't know when. 5 years ago or maybe 10.
Checkpoint. The space on the skin the other cannot touch, where you are the guard at every post, holding in a host of deadly secrets.
Maithily, Maxim Gorky, Edison, Kalidas, Tukaram, Vyas, Shakespeare, Dnyaneshwara,
Itali, Nata, Shabda, Sabata, Ven, Hulu, Asaranga, Sarakya.
लितरती है सफाशी, निकली यारी साफ शफाफ, टंडन पीएन चकाचक, पहने दाग तेज तरार, सुचरती लिटिल नोट्स हुआ इशारा नाची यारी, बिस्मिल्लाह.
कविता यही करती है, यही सीधा मगर जोखिम भरा काम, कि सारे शब्दों के बाद भी आदमी के पास हमेशा बचा रहे एक सादा पन्ना.
So like I saw, this is a presentation of Indian contemporary poetry. So poetry is usually recited, but this poetry is performed by actors. Poetry and movement are very similar because there's already an abstraction in poetry which is not present in any script or text or a narrative. So for me to devise movement for poetry was actually quite easy, but it also gives the audience another layer to experience the poem. Because the first time you listen to a poem, it may not reach you, because the words might be too complicated or it might be too language based for you. But because of movement and music, you get an experience. Is it a joyous poem? Is it sad? Is it dreamy? So that was our intention of layering it with movement and music. So this is a very active production. We're touring next month in Bangalore. and there will be some shows in Bombay as well. It's interesting if you really like language, because language is a real hero of this piece. It's interesting to work also with actors and their bodies. And my objective when I work with actors is just for them to be more mindful of what they do on stage, and every movement is specific and not random. So even if I'm pointing, there has to be some weight in the point, and it just can't be there because naturally your body goes there. But there has to be some thought behind that movement, is my objective when I work with actors. So that's what I've tried to do in Blank Page, when I've assigned them any movement or gesture. After this, I'm currently working on a new choreographic piece by a very renowned choreographer called Preethi Athreya. Have you heard of Preethi Athreya? She's a voice in Indian contemporary movement. She's worked largely with Padmini Chettur in Chennai, who's actually a student of Chandralekha in Chennai, who were all voices of contemporary Bharatanatyam. She is doing a piece called Conditions of Carriage, for which currently we are training. Conditions of Carriage is based on the act of jumping. Yeah. Now the philosophy of the piece is that when you jump, you cannot ornament your body too much. So when I'm jumping, there's very little I can do with my body because I have to hold my weight, I have to land. So it's more like a survival than making it look beautiful. She's also inspired by sports. There's a lot of movements from football, boxing that have been included in the piece. She's also interested in seeing how jumping looks on different bodies and not only dancers. So we have actors, directors, dancers, statisticians, musicians in the piece, and we're all exploring the idea of a jump. So that will start its performance tour in September. Hopefully it should come to Mumbai and you should be able to catch it. It's called Conditions of Carriage. That is the other current choreographic work that's not in the theatre medium. It's purely based on the body, and the inquiry is only about the body and nothing else. Post that, in December, I work with my own piece. It's based on an abhang. Do you know what abhangs are? Yeah. It's a form of poetry from probably 12th century Marathi literature. So I've chosen one abhang by Saint Muktabai, and I'm inspired by that. And that is something I'm going to explore. It's called Taati Ughada Dnyaneshwara. And that is my point of departure for the piece. So that is something that I'm currently exploring, and probably will go on the floor in December. So this is the space I am in right now, exploring both choreographic work in the space of dance and in the space of theatre. Although my leanings are much more towards theatre vocabulary than pure inquiries of the body. I'm more interested in that. Any questions? Yeah, put some people to sleep.
You mentioned contemporary Bharatanatyam.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's breaking away from the rules of Bharatanatyam and having your own individual nature about that form. So I might have my certain set of adavas, and that to say express an abhang, which may not fall under the syllabi or the repertory of Bharatanatyam. I'm using that to explore a very contemporary idea. And so I may not stick to an alaripu or a shabdam to express that. I might do my own composition to express that. Any other questions?
In contemporary, have you done something on your own, as in you spoke about collaborating with people, so is there anything of yours as a contemporary movement practitioner?
Not as a soloist. So I am yet to explore being a solo performer. But when I was with Rishikesh, as a young choreographer, we've explored certain ideas. But I have not composed a full-length piece as a soloist. Although the material that you see in all these pieces is mine, because I have generated that material. Although I have not stepped out from the performance space and choreographed something. So I am still exploring being a choreographer. As a performer, yes, I have created my own material. But as a choreographer, I still feel I have some miles to go before I can actually be outside and compose a full-length piece.
In the video where you guys were like moving through that space, so basically for that kind of a performance, do you look for such spaces with a certain character, or do you like according to the space you choreograph your dance?
It can actually work both ways. Sometimes you are commissioned to perform somewhere, and you then have to find characteristics that speak to you in the space. Sometimes you have the option of choosing a space and devising a performance around it. For this, we actually chose this space because Rishikesh was interested in exploring the levels of this library, and also because it can be viewed from anywhere. It can have a top view and a bottom view and from the side. So that kind of interested us also as performers. So in that video we chose our space. But for example in Gotha we were commissioned to perform there. So within the complex of Gotha we found spaces that had some character and that could give us some context to the choreography. Yeah. So it can be both.
So the way you were talking about using space and the idea of breaking away from structure and what's the past, it's quite similar to architecture in a lot of sense. So
okay.
Are even dance styles, are they based on philosophical ideas the way we base eras or styles on architecture? Is there a philosophical background that we follow?
So all dance styles have some form. Although I say contemporary has no structure as such, but there is a lot of structure even within the contemporary space. I feel that every dance style has come out of a specific era. When we see in retrospect, that is how it has been. It has been largely influenced by social, political, economic influences of that time, and that's how styles have been born. But when it is being formed, I don't think there was a thought about philosophy. I think it was more person-based, people who came up with these styles and these ideas. But yes, it has definitely been influenced by what is happening around us, and I strongly believe that, at least for me, art needs to be influenced by what is happening. It can't be too indulgent and inward looking. It needs to have a context of the time you are in, and that interests me a lot.
I actually found the blank page. So there are these poems, and then the representation that we generally struggle with even in architecture, like the representation of a text or representation of certain ideas, the way it comes out. So in this case, there was certain kind of poems which probably allowed certain things to happen. Like for example, the two girls sitting, one girl is saying the poem in a different language and the other one. So there is some sense of binary and at the same time then two different expressions. So was that already a script that was given, or was it chosen because like the source of the poems to suit movement really happened, or the movement really taking?
Actually, the poems were chosen as per themes. So the themes of the poems were the act of writing poetry itself, poems based on that, the act of writing poetry, women identity, relationships, and it could be any relationship, could be mother-child, could be husband-wife, and resistance poetry against state or establishment. These were three broad themes. Now, as a director, Sunil was very clear that some poems did not warrant movement and some poems did. So we started off with that distinction. But when we went on the floor, we thought that we could still have movement in this poem, either to add to the aesthetic of the performance, or to give an audience and hook to latch on to the poem, or to enhance the experience. So with these thoughts, we started devising. But we also had read a lot of these poems over 3 months. So we read, the moment I thought that, okay, this line, I really want to go on the floor and improvise. So I used to go on the floor and do a movement, and if we thought that it complemented the poem, we kept it. If we thought that it was too much text movement, we kind of didn't keep it. So we tried to integrate it as much as possible rather than keep it two separate disciplines coming on stage. So we didn't want to see it like an actor and a dancer, but it needed to look like a poem being performed. So that was also the anchor for composing, that it looks integrated. Did I answer your question?
When you say it looks integrated, do you also choreograph it in such a way? Because if you're interpreting a movement which is from a poem, you yourself have to recite that, to feel that. So you can't read it and then do that. I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting, and we struggle with it even today. Is how to not have, so if I'm an audience, how to not have this. You know, like how do I not get out of text, look at movement, get into text. So we have to kind of balance that. That's a constant dialogue that we're also having. On a very practical level, it is also the idea of subframing that poem. So how do I place myself in relation to an actor itself changes the meaning of how it's perceived. So that I have to be very clear about, of where I am standing. If I'm at another level, am I lower, am I higher? That itself changes the reading of the poem. So you have to decide where the audience can land their eye. There's something called landing of the eye in choreography. What movement is drawing attention? This is something that a choreographer has to be very clear about. So do I want my eye to land here, or do I want my eye to land together on both these two? But yes, we are struggling with that. We're trying to break that monotony of one line movement. So that is something we've moved away from. So either I move and then the poem is recited. I move, or it happens in conjunction. But not illustrating the line. That is something we didn't want to do. Yeah. Also as performer, there's also a very clear line between illustrating and being. Right? So am I illustrating being angry, or am I being anger? So if you're being anger, the audience will feel it more than when you're acting out anger. Any other questions?
Like you said, sometimes the poetry may not reach the audience.
Yeah.
Then in such cases, as in how do you devise it out? Do you work it out amongst the people that you are working? Or would you have somebody to have a look at it? As in, how do you understand how the audience is going to take what you are going to portray?
So there's obviously an outside eye, because you have a director who is sitting and directing the piece. So that outside eye is always available to you when you are composing something. There's always a constant feedback. And then you get feedback through the shows as well as to how audience is perceiving it.
So from your previous shows that
Yeah, or you can also pilot, like for Moonfool we piloted the show. We had people come in and give us feedback about what they were reading, because Moonfool was much more abstracted than blank pages. And that is the way that the piece evolved also. With blank page, I think with this text, it's much more easier to know that this sensibility will appeal more to this audience. So that kind of a judgment is already there, and Sunil is very experienced, so he already has an idea of what may work with a certain set of audience members. So that advantage we definitely have.
Does contemporary movement also sometimes use lyrical music? Or so sometimes, I mean, does the movement ever relate to the lyrics in a song or something like that? Or is it just purely instrumental where the movement takes the
Right.
stage?
So it can be both, but largely when you're devising, the philosophy is that you stay away from music, because music makes it too easy for your body to move in a particular way. So if you're sad, then you immediately feel sad and your body will work in a very patterned way which you want to break. So you have to push your body to generate newer material and different quality of material. But there are artists who work also with lyrics, with text, with voice, sound. But the idea is not to make it literal. To have your own, like if you say a word many times, it changes the meaning of what is happening. No? So if I keep saying no, 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 no for like 10 minutes, the whole experience of it will go beyond the word. You will not focus on the word anymore. The experience will go somewhere else. So that is also the endeavor of contemporary.
No more questions? Thank you for coming today. It was a very interesting body of work that you have.